This is Grace. She claims to be a biology student. She goes to LSU. That's where we were. This is from probably April of 2022. I had just given a talk on Correct, Not Politically Correct about pretty much the problems with transgenderism. She was kind of a bit of a steamroller, and a steamroller comes from Greg Koukl's book, Tactics. That's someone who just won't take a breath and just keeps going and doesn't really acknowledge what you've said. They just move on to the next point. So this is what Grace was sort of like, as you'll see. Are we ready, Jorge?
I think so. Let me go ahead and I got to make sure we are doing it right. So let's see if the audience can hear this real quick.
I understand the biology. Are you saying that a woman is only...
I think everybody can hear it now. Here we go, guys.
...a person who has 2 X chromosomes and a man who is someone who only has an X and a Y chromosome?
I think that's the scientific definition, yes.
It's actually not, because there can be people with XXY. There can be Y chromosome inactivation.
By the way, Frank, she right there tried to give you a roundhouse to the face. You know, she immediately, she was waiting. You know, and that's one of the things that we she was just waiting. And one of the things that we have to realize is 99 times out of 10, like Richard House says, people are not listening or are not listening to understand. They're listening to respond. Okay?
Right.
The way that this biology works is that you have genes. Those genes make proteins. Those proteins develop the traits that you define as men and women. They develop the features that you define as male. They develop the genitalia. But you can be a woman with female genitalia and be XY. You can be a man, but you can have XX chromosomes.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about, Grace. You're talking about a very rare condition known as intersexed. Right.
1 in 100 people experience chromosomal differences in sex.
Okay, but not 1 in 100 have different genitalia or ambiguous genitalia.
And what do you say to those people?
Well, what you say is that's a situation that is not the norm. We're not saying that they're not people, obviously. As I understand it, maybe you know more about it than me, when you do have a truly intersexed person, at that point, either the parents or when they're old enough, they can decide which way they're going to orient themselves and they can get the appropriate surgery. But that's not what we're experiencing in our culture.
It's okay for people to decide their gender.
In that situation, but that's not what we're talking about in our culture. What we're talking about in our culture are people with perfectly normal functioning sexual organs trying to have them removed and trying to transition to another gender, which is impossible scientifically.
Have you ever doubted that you're a man?
Let's stop right here for a second. Let's stop right here for a second, just for a second. Now, when you're in front of an audience, you've got limited time, you can't always stop and question. You can do that a little bit, but if you do that too much, you'll never get through the question. Obviously, I could have stopped and asked her a question at this point. Like, did she even acknowledge the point I just made? No, she moved on to the next thing, as you noticed there. And so I just went with it and let her go on to the next thing. And as you'll see, she's articulate, but she doesn't acknowledge any point that I try and make to her. She just moves on to the next. Now, if you're in a private conversation with somebody, you could say, hey, can you just acknowledge what we just talked about there? Did you see what I just said there? Did that make any sense to you? And I probably could have done that here once or twice. I didn't. I just let her keep talking. That's probably my mistake. But there's a point where you got to kind of finish up the question and move on to somebody else. So I just kind of let her go from point to point. But the right tactical approach would be at this point to say, hey, wait a minute. I just said something. Did you understand what I said?
Right. Yeah, a bit of a dialogue going on.
Right.
In fact, as I was going through this in preparation for tonight, I counted 5 or 6 questions she slammed you with in between, but you can barely respond, and she's moved to the next one, moved to the next one. In that short video, she squeezes in 6. And I also counted at least 3 gotchas where she sets you up and she's waiting for the response. And like, to her credit, she crushed it in a lot of respects. Like if I didn't know better, I'd say she had read Tactics. Well, she pulled out a lot of stops.
Yeah, but one of the things that we need to be also aware of is the rhetorical power of some of these statements that she's making, right? Because she's coming in, try to pull an authoritative approach because she studied biology, and you, Frank, you're not a biologist, right? So things like that for the untrained ear and eye seem powerful. I actually just did a video about a response that 𝗧𝗥𝗢𝗧𝗓 made about the brothers Karamazov line about, you know, if God does not exist, anything is permitted. And the whole thing was just an emotional rant, didn't even touch the moral argument. So this is what we're seeing here. You want to continue?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right.
Continue.
Oh, have I ever doubted I'm a man? No, I have never doubted I'm a man.
Then what do you say to a transgender person who has never doubted their gender? You're saying that we all change and that obviously transgenderism is a product of...
There is 𝗧𝗔𝗫 on YouTube says, you know, she's ready to rumble with the hand or the hip. That's what he said. She's ready to go.
It's called a power pose.
The power pose. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
some kind of phase, but you've never doubted that you're a man. So
No,
where's your development of this change?
Grace, I'm not denying there are people truly with gender dysphoria. I've already said that. What I'm saying is the way out of that problem is not surgery according to the data. Okay? Psychiatry is the way out of that problem.
I also don't agree with your statement that after surgery,
See, stop.
you implied that transgender people...
Next topic.
Yeah,
Right.
she just moves on. She doesn't acknowledge anything. Now, I know you just said, Jorge, that this kind of argument from authority can be persuasive with people. But if you look at the YouTube comments, most people are going, wow, if this woman claims really to be a biologist, we're in big trouble.
Right.
Because she's just avoiding the biological realities.
It backfire on her. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But there are a lot of people in the audience that, you know, as soon as they hear that, they're like, you know, because I think we suffer from the problem of the fact that we already know these things is the curse of knowledge. We know all these things, we study these things, but, you know, let's say somebody like my 16-year-old daughter who is highly impressionable, she hears a young woman like that, you have to pay attention to that, you know?
Yes.
Let's keep going.
Let's continue.
Here comes the mic drop moment.
Yeah.
Okay, here you go.
people are more likely to commit suicide after surgery. But the statistics say that transgender people are more likely to commit suicide because of arguments that you make that they're invalid.
No, I'm not saying they're invalid.
I'm just saying that you implied that it's the surgery that's causing suicide.
No, it's
rates.
not. What I'm saying is the surgery doesn't fix anything. That's the point. It's practically the same rate whether they have the surgery or not.
If you woke up and grew breasts today, would like them to be removed? There are men.
Say that again?
Have you ever heard of 𝗧𝗢𝗏?
I had it.
And so did you have that fixed?
She didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, nobody was expecting that, you know.
For those of you that don't know, gynecomastia is a condition where you have like a little small mass on your breast. It can happen to men too. And it can make you look a little asymmetrical when you have your shirt off. And so when I was in the Navy, this developed. And since you're in the Navy, you get free healthcare. You know, you just, hey, can you take this out? Yeah, sure, we'll take it out. And that was it. I've never had an issue again. I mean, it was a scar about that big, you know, right under, I can't remember what side I had it on, but they just took it out. It was like kind of fibrous tissue. Right. And so she thought that this was causing me some sort of psychological had some psychological effect. It had no psychological effect on me. It was just that it just made you look asymmetrical. Right. So in any event, but she just keeps moving on. So let's just keep going.
Yeah. So steamrolling.
Yeah.
I did.
And did that make you feel affirmed in your gender and comfortable in your body?
No, when I was in the Navy, nobody knows this, by the way. Jesus.
Now everybody knows, Frank.
Right.
Now, the cat is out of the bag, man.
All right,
everybody knows. All right, let's keep going.
Revealing I need a HIPAA form to sign here or something.
I got a guy here named Renee Vasquez says, I have that too. It's called moobs. This guy, I get to watch the chat, man. It's great. Okay, let's get Phoenix. Let's get full shot on Phoenix right now. And let's continue.
Stop. Stop. Keep going.
Ready? Okay,
Yes.
let's go.
You don't have to talk about it.
No,
if you don't
what
want
I'm
to.
saying is, yes, I've had that myself and had it surgically removed when I was in the Navy. Yeah.
And do you feel more comfortable in your body and more affirmed in your gender because of that?
Well, it wasn't a gender thing for me. It was the fact, well, I can't even get into it now because it had nothing to do with my gender. Okay. So it had to do with it had to do with the fact that it looked really odd. Let me just put it that way. Okay. But Grace, my point is if we truly care about people, are we going to try and force them down a road, particularly as children, into a solution to a problem which is proven not to be a solution?
You just said that having that surgery made you feel better about yourself.
That has nothing to do with transgender
I
surgery.
think-
I wasn't changing my sex. I was having breast tissue removed. Okay. I was always a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So.
And say that I have XY chromosomes, but I'm born with female genitalia and female body types, but I believe I'm a man. Should I not be allowed to have that breast tissue removed?
As an adult, you can do whatever you want.
Yes, that's fine.
My problem is with the children. That's where I'm having a real problem.
Is there a magic button at 18 that instantly makes you feel like you know who you are and absolutely what your gender is?
No, well, I think for women, it's probably like 15. For men, it's 37. To be honest with you, okay? Because men don't develop as quickly as women, all right? But no, we've just chosen 18 kind of as the adulthood crossing point, although for some issues it's 21, like drinking, okay? So, no, maybe it's later than 18, okay? My big problem, and I would say this to somebody who's 37, that the surgery does not appear to help anyone. And if you want more data on this, you can go to sexchangeregret.com. sexchangeregret.com. But I wouldn't even be talking about this issue unless I thought the current way the culture's going is hurting people. And it is. Why would I bring all this abuse on myself?
I'd just like to say that I disagree.
Okay.
Thank you for talking
Thank you.
to me.
Thank you, Grace.
All right. So she was, even though she was a steamroller, she was at least pleasant, right?
She really was. Yeah. She
Yeah,
remained and she showed self-restraint when everyone knew how she wanted to finish that sentence earlier with, because of people like, moves on.
Oh, and I think it's very important that you brought in the issue with the kids. I mean, the same way if you realize that she said, well, is there a magic kind of day where you now it's the same thing that the pro-abortion advocate says it's not a human being until he comes out of the womb. So that canal, right, that 8-inch canal makes the child a child, right, a person. But also, the issue with my kids, at least with my kids, they're 15 and 16, about to be 16 and 17. They don't know any better. You know what I mean? They have dumb phones. They don't have smartphones. Why? Because I know the stuff that is out there. Now imagine you giving these children the ability to go and mutilate themselves.
Yeah, well, let's go back to that point she makes, why 18? Okay, this is something in logic called the argument from the beard, which means that because you don't have a precise number, there is no distinction. That's not a valid way of arguing. An argument from the beard means, when does just having growth on your face become a beard? Well, you might not know the exact point, but you know the difference between a clean shaven face and a face like Jorge's face. He's got a full beard there. Okay.
Right.
So just because you can't detect the exact transition point between just stubble and a beard doesn't mean there's no distinction between a clean face and a beard. You might not be able to know the exact date or the exact age when somebody becomes an adult.
Right.
You do know the difference between a 37-year-old and a 7-year-old. Okay.
Right. And you got to set a date somewhere.
Yeah, a 37-year-old has has certain capacities a 7-year-old doesn't. Okay. And so, look, personally, biblically, of course, transgenderism is never appropriate. But if we're arguing in the political world, we at least have to say, as Christians, we can't allow children to do this because they can't give informed consent. And even if they could, it's not going to help them. That's what the data show.
Right.
So adults, we may allow certain things that we think are unbiblical because we can't be the nanny state and outlaw everything. However, when it comes to children, we have to draw a really bright line here. And that's why, by the way, Tennessee, they put their cross-sex surgery at 26. You got to be at least 26. And the reason they do that is because they say that the human brain doesn't fully develop until 26.
Until 26, yeah.
Right.
And now you're giving them the ability to think things through. The see testimonials. Right now, we're running in a Frankenstein experiments. The Europe already saying, hey, no more of this crazy mess, you know, because they're going to sue them up the yin yang once these, you know, transition people say, hey, I didn't get enough therapy. I didn't get enough, you know, second or third opinions. And you guys just went off and chopped me all up. And now I'm here and it's irreversible. Forget it.
And by the way, this question brought to you by Correct Not Politically Correct about same-sex marriage and transgenderism, because that's the book I was talking about at LSU, and that's what precipitated that question. But if you want to go further, this book doesn't have any Bible verses in it. This is the natural law, common sense, medical case that both same-sex marriage and transgenderism are not good for individuals or nations.